What's up guys, it's GM Max here, and I thought it'd be really fun to do a more basic video today. A video showing how to take the opponent's free chess pieces, and what better way to show it than playing some chess games on chess.com. So let's do it. So okay, looks like we're playing a 900, so it might not be so easy to take some free pieces, but it's certainly going to be some fun to play, where I can show how you can put some pressure on him, well, unless he aborts like this. So let's try again, find a different opponent, maybe someone somewhat lower rated than that guy, so that I can show how to take the opponent's free pieces. Now, one trick I want to share with you guys to worth keeping in mind when it comes to taking opponent's free piece is to look for the undefended piece in the opponent's position. You can see that F7 pawn of my cursor is kind of a weak point in a lot of positions that you can try to target, so that's something to keep in mind as well, that if you're starting out in chess, a lot of the attacks are going to be against that pawn. Okay, bishop e7 is a little bit passive, but okay, we can go rook e1, knight e5 and get some attacking chances here. I mean, position is still very solid, so it's not that easy to force a big advantage. But okay, c5, well, may as well take it, because why not? And after bishop c5, let's go knight c3. So I'm making sure I develop a new piece for every turn to make sure I can get a bit of an initiative. And yeah, I might go knight b5 just to see if he is going to fall for the knight c7 fork or not. Again, we can see it because the rook is undefended and can't move. They're sort of vulnerable to these kind of tactics with knight to c7. And also, if he does play a move like knight a6, there's a cool trick that I'll be able to show you guys as well, which you can try to solve if you want to challenge yourself a bit. To his credit, he actually finds a good move here in knight d5, but now, after the move rook takes e8 and queen takes e8, it turns out I can actually win a pawn in this position if I want to. Well, can you find this key move here for white to play? Okay, well done if you came up with the move bishop takes b8. Because you might notice that the free piece is not just about taking the opponent's free pieces, but also making sure that we don't get take when knight takes f4 ourselves. But now we can take and, well, we simply win the pawn. Because you can see here that it's defended by the knight, that we've got one attacker, one defender, so we're all good here. And okay, he does have the bishop pair that does give him a little bit of play for the pawn, but I think not really enough. I'll just go queen d2, rook e1, and just attack the queen on e8 from there. So yeah, so far so good. We managed to take one free piece. Let's see what the tally is like at the end of the game. Okay, with a6, I think he's scared of some piece going to b5, but it's really nothing to worry about, I think. He could have played some other developing move like bishop to d7 or bishop g4 instead, which probably gave him better chances to hold. So he's having a bit of a think in this position, and yeah, this exchange is quite nice for me, because now I actually am able to just get rid of his bishop pair for free. If he plays queen e5, that actually leads to a nice little puzzle where I can then try to win by force. Okay, I predict his move in. Alright, what's the move that you would play in this case if you were white? Because you might be thinking at this moment, well, he's threatening to take my knight on d4, and maybe you're looking for a move to defend that. But there's actually a better move in this position. The answer is that you can play the move rook to e1, which actually is using the weak back rank, and we can also make sure to smash that like button as well, because it all helps to boost the YouTube algorithm. Because if he takes the knight, I have a rook e8 checkmate, exploiting the weak back rank. So that's why he gives up the queen. I don't want to point out if he did play queen e4 that even if I didn't have the move of rook e8, actually queen d4 I would still have a tactic here, even without this move, where I'd have the move bishop h7. And it goes to show that piece safety doesn't just come down to a simple question of, okay, can this piece be taken? But also sometimes there are tactics as well that help you to determine whether a piece is safe or not. Here we see it, white would win the queen for a knight and a bishop. Anyway, let's find another guy to play. So let's see who is up next. I'll play 3 minutes again because I'll give me a bit of time to actually explain some of what's going on. Not that I really need the time, but it'll help you guys out to show it. So like I said, loose piece drop off is a key point, and okay, another guy about the sort of rating I'm looking for to play. You can see that e5 pawn's already undefended, and I'm going to attack it with knight f3. And I'm going to attack it again with the move pawn to d4. So you can see I'm using this pawn in order to fight for the initiative early here. He takes, I take back. I notice how that knight was defended by my queen, but actually this was not such a good trade for him, because now my queen is very well placed in the center, and it's not that easy for black to sensibly attack it. If he does put the move pawn like this, I can just bring the queen back. And after bishop c4, he's weakened these squares on the d file. So he just made his position very bad here. I feel he might go d6, but it's kind of hard to say. I mean, it's probably possible that I could have played better moves than queen d1, but anyway, it's what I did. Like, queen c4 might have been more precise. And now with the queen on c7, I think, okay, this queen is undefended, so that already makes it a target for attack. with moves like knight to d5 being a potential idea to take that outpost and to hit the queen. So he comes up with knight to f6, and okay, in that case there are a lot of good moves for white. I'm going to play bishop to c4 just to keep that good grip over that d5 square, as it were. So we'll see what he comes up with, whether he goes d6 or whether he does something a little bit different. But for now, the position is certainly very, very comfortable for white. If he goes bishop d6, I'm going to have knight b5 as well. That sort of is a good tactical point to keep in mind, that often they will leave their piece vulnerable to knight forks in this kind of way. So yeah, he's sort of thinking for a long time, probably not sure what to do. Whereas my plan's pretty simple: castle short, open up the center if I can, if his king stays in the middle. Yeah, queen c6, it turns out I can actually ignore the attack on this pawn, because after castles, if he takes twice on e4, I actually have a tactic that's going to allow me to win the queen in that case. So that's to see if you guys can spot it. Okay, he falls for the trick. So my first move is to play knight takes c4 here. And then if he takes my knight, which is probably what he's going to do, unless he sees what's coming at this point, well, then I would have the move of rook to e1. And that would allow me to win the queen, because he can't take my bishop then, because now after rook e1, if he moves the queen, his king is going to be in check. But otherwise, I simply win the queen for the rook with a decisive material advantage. Not to mention his king is also stuck in the center, so I can play moves like bishop g5 and use that pin to good effect, queen e7. And it's a position where, normally speaking, most people would resign. But okay, I guess it's true that if you're a beginner watching this, maybe you've had a game before where you played this, got a position like this, and still your opponent somehow managed to win. So it's good to see how to take all their free pieces. You can see that the bishop is attacked twice and defended only once. So we take it, and then the pawn, we can choose which pawn to take, but he decides to resign instead. Let's play him again, because it's kind of a good opponent to show the value of taking the free pieces and how to notice when your opponent's pieces are undefended. In my case, if you're starting out in chess, actually just as simple as asking, well, what are the undefended pieces in the position, or what different captures do I have available? And also, if you want to avoid blundering, you can also say, well, what are the captures my opponent can play? Are there any of my pieces are undefended? And that will really help you to play much more accurately and minimize the amount of blunders. Because if you are relatively new to chess, a lot just comes down to simply not putting any of your pieces on pre. You're going to be able to beat quite a lot of players simply by more or less just making sure your pieces are all safe and all consistently taking the undefended piece of your opponent. So I'm going to play knight f6 to attack that pawn on e4 here. He plays knight c3, and you might think, okay, he's defended the pawn and I can't take it. But it's actually a little tactic here that allows me to safely take the pawn with knight takes e4. And the point of this is that if he takes the knight, I'm going to play my pawn to d5 like so. In this way, the fork allows me to win back the piece and still keep a very nice center with the pawn on e5, which you're going to see very soon in the game continuation. So, and it's a nice point, if you are the only one with a pawn in the center, it allows you to get very good control of the position. See, I'm the only one with a pawn on e5. He's now down a pawn, and okay, queen e2 is trying to attack both of my pawns at once. But I have a quite nice move that actually allows me to defend both the pawns at the same time. Do you see what that move is? Okay, so the move I'm thinking of is the move queen to d5, and to be fair, there are other good moves like f6 and kicking the knight away first was also very strong, in fact. But queen e5 is kind of a nice point that you can defend both the pawns simultaneously. And still, I can kick the knight later. Or actually, I might play the move bishop f5 first, just to hit that c2 pawn. Again, you can see that pawn is undefended, and well, if we look at the d3 pawn, how many times is it attacked and how many times is it defended here? Okay, it turns out I'm attacking that pawn 3 times. It's only defended twice. That means I can safely take it with the move c takes d3. And when he takes back, I'm going to take with the less valuable piece. Okay, decides not to take it. But if he had taken, I would have played bishop takes d3 in order to have that pin or that skewer on the queen on e2 to the rook on d1. Now, make sure not to play the move d takes c2. It might look like a free pawn, but actually queen takes d5 would then lose my queen. So instead, I'm going to play the move f6. And the reason I play f6 is because his knight doesn't really have a good square. And it's a little bit advanced for some of you watching, but it's worth knowing if he does retreat the knight to h3, that can actually win a piece by basically deflecting the defender of one of his pieces away. I would be able to play the move bishop takes h3, pawn takes h3, and then I would be able to take that knight on f3 at the end. If you're able to visualize that, then congratulations. So now he's left the knight undefended, so I'm going to take it. Of course, keep in mind rook e5 is covered by knight takes e5. I'm going to play the move bishop to e7, or actually I might castle long, because that way it gets my king out of the open center and ensures I can consolidate my extra piece. Now, in this position, of course, I can take that pawn on d3. It's a perfectly good move. But there's actually an even better move in this position. I can play the move bishop b4, and this pin allows me to basically win the rook after the queen moves away. It's very important example, just because you can make a capture, it doesn't always mean you should play a capture immediately. There may be some case where there's actually an even better move in the position, and where it's well worth your while to look for that move. So after queen takes, okay, bishop d2 is just giving me more material, so I will say thank you. I mean, you'll notice he didn't see here that he could take the bishop with queen takes e1, so now he gets even further behind. And I'll play queen takes d3, because when you're up this much material, trading off the queens makes it much easier for you to win the game. And I'm expecting he's probably going to resign relatively soon, but if not, it'll allow me to show you how to win with an extra rook and a bishop. So a pretty nice game, kind of showing sort of how to successfully take the opponent's pieces. Let's try and find another opponent to play against for this. So another player rate about 1,000. I'm going to play the Scandinavian this time, because I did do a video on it not so long ago, and well, it'll be fun to show you the ideas. And okay, I'm going to play knight f6 and play it as a pawn sack to get a nice lead in development to start the game. And now I'm going to play the move bishop to g4. It's objectively not the best move. I should probably take the pawn. But it's a way to kind of be a little bit tricky and try and get him into a more passive setup. So I'm going to go queen takes d5. And those of you who saw my win with the Scandinavian video, you'll notice plan like putting the queen here, going knight c6 long castles, and just putting that rook on d8 in order to attack the center and control that juicy d4 point. Well, let's see what it comes up with. Like, d3 is quite a passive move at this point compared to d4. It allows me to put my pawn on e5 and just have a very good control over the center. One good thing we can say about white's plays here is at least managing to keep all the pieces relatively safe. But I'm going to play the move e5 and kick his bishop, because that bishop is undefended and so it has become a bit of a target. We're going to see if he blunders with knight e5 or if he plays something a little bit different. Because keep in mind that my e5 pawn is defended twice and attacked twice, so that means the pawn is safe at the moment in general. So let's see which way he brings back the bishop. And in terms of my general plan, I could also castle short, but the nice thing about castling long is it would give me the rook to d8 on the queen. Now, he thinks he has a tactic, but it turns out that his tactic actually doesn't work, because after bishop takes e5 and queen takes e5, he won't be able to play the move bishop takes g4 here, because of the pin on the bishop to the king, where you can see that the king would be in check if he takes, and therefore it means I basically won a piece. So again, I managed to successfully take pieces, and it sometimes happens that not only are you able to often play tactics yourself, but sometimes you can even trick the opponent into playing some tactic that just doesn't work for them. Now here I'm going to say a little bit of a trap, because normally the normal move would just be to take on e2, just be a piece up and win the ending. But I'm going to play bishop d6 to show you that you can also threaten mate on h2. It'll be interesting to see whether he falls for it or not, whether he takes my bishop. Okay, he doesn't take the bishop, but he missed my threat of playing queen takes h2. You can see with this battery that the bishop is now protecting the queen. And after king f1, I have a mate in one move, which you guys are welcome to try and find yourself before I play it. Okay, well done if you found the smothered mate queen h1. So that's checkmate, and that was a pretty smooth win by me, where you can see I was able to just attack his pieces and he didn't really know how to defend. I'm going to play the move e4 once again, because that's what most of you guys are doing. And I did a video a while back on the Vienna Gambit, so let's do it again and show you how this works in practice. I know that I'm leaving this pawn undefended, but the idea is that if he takes, I'm going to push pawn to e5, and that's going to give me a very strong initiative in the center, where I kick his knight around and take over the middle of the board, which is after all what you're aiming to do in general in the opening. You want to control the center, develop your pieces quickly, safeguard your king, and take control of the game. Now, actually, I'm very impressed he found this d5 move, because most players of his range would not find it, but it's actually a very good move. So after fe5, he can play knight takes e4, and still keep a foothold in the center. I'm going to play what I recommended in my Vienna Gambit video, and play the move queen to f3 on how to beat e4, e5, just so that I do practice what I preach. Now, you might remember from that video that after knight takes c3, we play d takes c3, and basically we get our pieces developed very, very quickly. Well, let's see what move he comes up with here as black. He's thinking quite a lot at this point, which this is a somewhat critical position where he doesn't really know what he's doing. So it's kind of sensible for him to take a bit of time to think about his move and not just to play the first thing that comes to mind. So he plays knight c3, I'll play d takes. I'm just going to castle long and put that pressure on that d5 pawn with a rook on d1. Well, let's see what he comes up with. Yeah, queen h4 is not such a bad move necessarily, but okay, I can play g3 and ask the queen where it's going. I mean, he can put the queen on e4 and trade the queens, and it's actually a very sensible move by him. Because in this position, after a trade of queens, well, my pawn on e5 is just as weak as his pawn on e4. He can attack it with moves like knight c6 or knight d7, and he can also defend his pawn on e4 with bishop f5. Now, knight c6, I might actually play... It's an interesting question whether I go bishop g2 or bishop b5. I'm going to play bishop g2 just because it fits with the theme of attacking the undefended pieces. And yeah, f5 was a mistake. You didn't realize that you can take en passant in chess. As after all, the black pawn has moved 2 squares forward right to next to my pawn here. If I waited one more move, though, I wouldn't have the option to take en passant. So it's very important that I do it now with e takes f6. And what you might notice is I'm not just taking this pawn, but I'm also discovering an attack on this pawn with bishop takes at c7. And, well, that means I'm going to be able to actually take either pawn that I want to as such. It's kind of an interesting choice because you really could make an argument for either of those captures in this position. But I think I'll probably play bishop takes c7 to say that the pawn on f5 could still be a weakness. Or I could even postpone the decision and wait to see which one he tries to defend and take the other. That would be kind of cheeky, but I'm going to take this pawn instead. The reason is I think that having that f4 square for the knight is going to be really nice. And my king is still in the center, so I don't want to open up the center all that early if I can help it. I think it'll be better just to keep control. And, well, the f5 pawn is a backward pawn that I can attack with castles and bishop h3 and all that good stuff. Well, let's see what he comes up with here. He's a bit behind in development, but the fact the center is closed does mean he should still be able to survive for now. I'm going to castle long, actually, so that I can, well, get my king out of the center and put my rook on d1, on f1. It's nice with the rook on d1, I do have some nice pressure. Now, bishop e6 is kind of asking for knight f4, hitting the bishop. Now, you might be saying, well, what about bishop takes a2 max? But that's something I'm willing to risk, because after b3, his bishop is going to be trapped and won't really be able to escape. So I think that this is a very good continuation for me, where his bishop will just be completely out of the game after that. So, yeah, this is going to be, I think, quite a good line. I might just play king b1. Actually, I have to be careful, because now the bishop could be getting trapped on c7 after rook c8. So I'm going to play knight d5 to make the escape square on f4 for the bishop. It's also a very good square for the knight, just on an outpost where you can't harass it with an enemy pawn. So he takes, but that's, I think, a mistake, because now I'm not just hitting the bishop, but I'm also hitting the f5 pawn. And okay, he saw the attack on the f5 pawn, but he didn't see the attack on the bishop. And after takes, I mean, it's just a winning position, so he resigns. Let's play him a couple more times, see what he goes for. So unrated game. Let's play Scandinavian again. Why not? So d5, and yeah, e5 is a move that we're very happy to see as black, because now that pawn is going to come under pressure with knight c6. Okay, bishop b5. It's not a very good move, but okay, I'm going to play bishop d7. Because in some cases, you're going to end up playing e6 later, and then your bishop could be a bit stuck. So by playing it this way, I'm just making sure that I basically can develop naturally. You know, moves like knight d4 also have potential. Actually, I'm even threatening a nice little tactic in this position, but okay, he saw my trick. Like, I was going to play knight takes e5, but it doesn't work when you can take back with a knight. So I'm going to play the move e6 instead, and just play it like a French defense, where white has not managed to get the pawn on d4 to support the e5 pawn. Which means I can try to attack that pawn moves like knight e7 and knight g6. I find that if you don't have a piece that you can simply take, often trying to find a weakness that you can attack is a pretty good plan B in order to put your opponent under a bit of pressure, as we see here. I have a feeling he's probably going to castle or take on c6, but we'll see which one he goes for. I mean, it's certainly clear that black's position is more pleasant at this point. So he plays c4, which is quite a creative move, actually, trying to pressure the center. I'm going to play the move of a6 in reply. And this is actually setting a little bit of a trap, because if he plays a normal bishop a4, I actually have a little bit of a tactic that'll be fun to show you guys. It'll be a great demonstration of concept of loose pieces drop off if he goes bishop a4. But he goes cd5 instead, which it's a somewhat better move, but I think that strategically the position is a lot better for me. We can see that with the exchange that the material is still equal, but my bishop is an absolute monster on this c6 point. Also, another idea is that I can put my knight on a square like d5 or f5. It just has a lot of very juicy outposts in the center here. And so he plays knight c3, which is quite a decent move. I'm going to play queen d7, not just defending the pawn to make sure it's defended as many times as attacked, but also making sure that I'm preparing to develop by getting the queen out. So he plays rook d1, and I'm going to put an eye on f5 just not to let him play the move d4 so easily. Because he can't play d4, his structure is a little bit sort of fragmented with the pawns on e5 and on d2 as it were. I'm expecting he'll probably play a move like d3, but he has played quite creatively to this point, so he may try to surprise me once again. I mean, my general plan is just to go bishop e7 and castles, put a rook on d8, and just pile the pressure on that d-file. You also notice that my rook on a8 has actually managed to develop without me even needing to move it, which is quite nice. Now after b3, I'm very tempted to play b4, but I think I'm going to just develop with bishop e7, just play very solidly. I'd say that we don't have to do anything special to get an advantage. And so I'll probably go bishop b2 and fianchetto. I'll castle my king, and if knight e4, maybe I just go rook to d8 or queen d5, and keep up the pressure in that sort of way. So he goes d3, let's castle. I mean, it's true, he's managing to do a better job of keeping his pieces safe in this game, but even so, he still has some weaknesses in his structure that I can exploit. Okay, now all my pieces are on good squares, so I can start thinking more about how to actually attack my opponent. I mean, a move like knight d4 is one that can be very annoying for him, for example, just taking that outpost with the knight, as it were. Because after all, his square is, again, one it's not covered by a white pawn, as it were, or actually can't be covered by a white pawn with knight d4. So, let's see what move he tries in this case. I have a feeling it's going to be something like knight e4 or rook ac1, but knight e1 is, yeah, a move that... You see it now, the bishop is undefended and also the knight is undefended. So I can actually attack both of them with queen to d4. Now, it turns out he can defend both these pieces by playing bishop d2 or queen d2. But also both moves are a little bit passive, so I'm kind of happy to get this in and to sort of take my winners, my small winners, as it were. I mean, after queen d2, the knight will be able to kick my queen away with knight e2 afterwards, but let's see if he finds the move or not. Okay, he plays knight e4, which admittedly I didn't see. But I actually have a nice little tactic here if I want, where I can play the move c4. And I think that's going to be very strong. You'll notice that the knight e4 is only really defended by the pawn and the queen. So if he does play d takes c4, I can play queen takes e4 and actually win the knight in that position. So let's see what he comes up with. He goes knight d6, but unfortunately, although it solves the problem with the knight, now you're losing the bishop with queen takes f4, and now it's going to be all over. I mean, he was going to lose on time anyway, but yeah, this is the game. And he'll probably, yeah, he goes dc4. I'm going to play knight takes d6 here. And then I will take back with the bishop, because I'm going for queen h2 and queen h1 mate, but okay, lost on time. Let's play this guy in one more game, just to kind of show, well, how to play these sort of positions and how to take the opponent's free pieces. And, well, that will probably be the last game for this video. I'm going to play knight f3 this time, just do something a little bit different. And I'm going to play the move bishop c4, just play a solid Italian game. Of course, you may recall that I showed how to beat it with knight to f6 in a rather recent video for Black on my YouTube channel. Also, do make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more of my chess content, and also comment below with what you've been learning from this video. So the move h6 is a move we're generally quite happy to see, because after the move d4, we're able to hit in the center and sort of get a very nice space advantage. He's trying to avoid the move knight g5, but the problem is you're losing the initiative. And now after bishop b4, c3, the problem is kind of meaningless checks is that you're basically, the bishop's going to have to move anyway. And c3 is actually a move that I want to play in order to support the pawn on d4. Well, now the pawn e5 is only defended once and it's attacked twice. That means I can safely take it with d takes e5 and be a full pawn ahead here. And even moves like bring the queen in and trying to mate on f7 is also quite an appealing possibility for white. He plays the move d6, and it's worth noting you're actually not forced to take the pawn on d6 in this position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the tension with bishop f4. So that way I'm just going to defend that pawn an extra time, so that if he takes me, I can take on d8, trade off the queens, and basically have a very big advantage in the end game, where I'm up a pawn, but also have a very nice lead in development to work with. Let's see what Black tries. I'm expecting him to play d takes e5, but he might surprise me. Yeah, he goes bishop g4, he's trying to pin my knight, but after ed6, now we see that this pawn is attacked twice, and defended only once. That means I can safely take it. And I'm going to take it with the queen, and the reason I take with the queen is because, well, I'm up 2 pawns, so that means that the trading of pieces is going to make it easier for me in general to convert my material advantage, and well, after bishop f3 is even facilitating that by giving me a very nice bishop pair. I do realize I do get double pawns on f3 and f2 here, but it's not really in a position to attack them, and my 2 extra pawns are way, way more important than having double pawns in such a position, like 100 times more important to have the 2 extra pawns. Well, let's see what he does. He might play a move like knight f6, and, well, then I might even play a move like rook g1 and try to attack him that way. That could be a fun way to make use of that file that's just been opened with the move of g f3. He goes knight to e7. I'm going to play knight d2, just develop solidly. I find that the more you're winning, the more you should think defense, and the more you're losing, the more you should think offense in terms of how to attack. That's one principle I learned as a young kid from Diane Heisman, and it's one that served me quite well in both my coaching and my playing career. So he decides to trade the queens, realizing that I was threatening to take on h6. But now the ending is just 2 extra pawns and, well, my bishops are just raking the board in the open center. So it's a position where he's got to fight on, but objectively he can't really save the game anymore. I'm going to castle long, and again, it's something you'll notice grandmasters do, that they make sure to bring all of the pieces in the game. And now knight g6 might seem like a safe move that the knight's defended by the pawn, but well done if you actually realize it's not a safe move. And the reason he resigned here is because of the move rook takes g6, where he can't take that rook because then the bishop would be giving check to the king from c4. But otherwise I simply have won a piece. I'm still up 2 pawns to boot, and it's just a completely lost position for black. So yeah, that's my training video on taking pieces. Obviously this one was aimed much more at beginners, and also I think in general it's going to be really useful for those who do want to know how to beat players with chess.com rating of 1300 and below. Well, you kind of see how I managed to do it and how I can follow the Grandmaster way. So as always, do make sure to smash that like button on that video, to subscribe to the channel for more of my chess content, and I will see you guys in the next training video. Good luck in taking your opponent's pieces.